Hello, welcome back. Pastor Joe Egbu has been quietly supporting his wife, Sinach, who is known as one of the most powerful voices in gospel music, for many years. Their relationship was often seen as a perfect example of a strong ministry partnership, underpinned by a shared love, faith, and purpose. However, behind their calm facade, whispers of trouble began to circulate. Some suggested that they were facing unseen hardships, while others claimed there were serious issues in their marriage. Throughout it all, Pastor Joe remained silent. This 56-year-old man, who typically avoided responding to critics or defending himself in interviews, finally broke his silence, leaving many shocked by his candid revelations. His words were raw and deeply human, not just because they were unexpected, but because they offered insight into the man behind the ministry. He didn't just respond to the rumors, he reshaped the narrative. The internet was taken aback by this story. It wasn't about scandal. It was about the quiet resilience it takes to navigate challenges without making a sound. Sinach, known for her empowering worship songs like Waymaker and I Know Who I Am, has been a global worship leader whose music resonates across various cultures. Her voice not only uplifts worshipers but also provides solace to the brokenhearted and hope to the weary. Yet, standing beside her, often without drawing attention to himself, was Pastor Joe Egbu. Many saw him as simply the supportive husband, quietly attending events while keeping a low profile. Despite his absence from the spotlight, he was well regarded for his steadfastness and commitment. From an outsider's viewpoint, their marriage seemed picture perfect, and fans frequently dubbed them relationship goals on social media. But in recent years, things started to shift. While Sinach continued to embark on global tours, Pastor Joe's appearances dwindled. At first, this didn't raise too many eyebrows. After all, not every husband tags along with their wife on ministry trips. However, as time passed, fans began to speculate. Comments asking about Pastor Joe's whereabouts started cropping up. Where's Pastor Joe? And is everything okay at home? Soon, gossip forums were buzzing with credible claims of marital strife, emotional detachment, and unspoken struggles, even though none of it was substantiated. In a social media landscape that thrives on speculation, Pastor Joe's silence only fueled the rumors. Some suggested that he was overwhelmed by Sinach's fame, while others hinted that he had pulled away from ministry entirely. Accusations of marital problems, jealousy, or emotional burnout buzzed about, with speculation growing as neither he nor Sinach addressed the allegations. But Pastor Joe stayed silent. He didn't defend himself or take to social media to clear the air. For years, he remained in the background, present but quiet. He would occasionally appear in family photos or at special events, always avoiding deep conversations, responding to journalists with polite smiles and brief comments. When asked about her husband, Sinach kept it diplomatic yet vague, saying, "My husband is a man of wisdom," which only deepened the mystery for their followers. Over time, the weight of his silence became heavier, and people started to interpret it in various ways. Some assumed he was just trying to protect their public image, while others questioned whether he was still involved in ministry. But throughout it all, Pastor Joe never spoke out. His silence was not a matter of pride but rooted in something deeper that few understood. He was navigating a personal journey that required introspection rather than a public response. In a world that values quick replies, he chose to step back and reflect rather than hide away. For years, he stood quietly beside Sinach, who was at the height of her ministry, renowned for her soul-stirring worship songs. Together, they conveyed a strong image of a spiritual partnership. But as time went on, his absence from events became noticeable. The silence around him bred speculation. Some suggested tension, while others felt he was struggling to find his place next to such a powerful figure within the Christian music scene. Posts hinted at personal weariness, unresolved issues, or emotional distance. Although these rumors began to fill the air, none were verified. Despite the growing inquiries, Sinach and Joe chose to remain silent, sharing only what they felt necessary. Without providing explanations, eventually, the stillness was shattered by a significant moment during a men's retreat. This gathering wasn't meant for public consumption. It was a private space for husbands, pastors, and leaders to share their stories. Pastor Joe was called to speak, not for his fame but for his experience. That day, he shared nothing dramatic but instead offered a heartfelt, authentic reflection on what it meant to support a globally recognized figure while feeling lost himself. He spoke candidly about his struggles with spiritual and emotional fatigue, not because of her celebrity, but because he had lost sight of who he was beyond expectations and the spotlight. "I never stopped loving her. I just lost the ability to love myself," he shared, explaining that his silence was a time of healing rather than avoidance. He needed space to rediscover his own voice, faith, and purpose. Once an excerpt from his speech surfaced online, it quickly resonated with many as listeners recognized a deeper truth in his experience. Rather than condemnation, people responded with empathy and support, sharing their own stories of quiet suffering and helping hands. Before the public noticed their struggles, Pastor Joe and Sinach had been on a journey of healing behind the scenes. They actively sought counseling, had tough conversations, and made conscious efforts to strengthen their bond, ensuring their relationship wouldn't succumb to the silent drift that often affects couples in ministry. Sinach never pressured Joe. She stood by him, prayed for him, and inspired him, understanding that true love is revealed in what happens when no one is watching. They started rebuilding not just their brand as a couple, but the foundation of their relationship. They initiated gatherings for ministry couples to share their realities, not just portray flawless lives. They advocated for the importance of personal identity in marriage, discussed setting healthy expectations, coping with burnout, and recognizing unaddressed grievances. Ultimately, they taught that silence can be respected, but it also deserves to be explored. Above all, they reminded others that a marriage doesn't thrive in public view but in the personal moments filled with genuine prayer and commitment, an essential message for the church. Pastor Joe questioned societal expectations that ministry couples must always portray perfection and explored how men struggle with the pressure to conform in silence.